Hey friends, today we are working on a very simple deal actually, a 2005 I believe this is, KTM 450 EXC I think is the model. It is the 6-speed, the trail version, and it has electric start. Actually got shut off and your electric start over there. My starter stopped working. They say that those relays are designed not to crank unless it's warmed up, but when you put your kickstart down, you turn it a little bit and they're supposed to crank. That wasn't very bright because my power wire is actually touching my ground here, so I should be careful. Oh, actually it's just barely touching. So it's trying to spin the starter, but it's not actually doing its job is the problem. So it wants to, I just put a new battery in, but it won't actually crank. So this is very simple. The tools that you need for this are simply an 8mm and a ratchet, really. There's 2 bolts. Your starter's right here. 2 bolts go in there. You just break them loose. They were in there pretty tight. And then you've got your little 10mm nut up here that holds your power wire. There should not be any power in this wire unless you're pushing the starter button. So you shouldn't have to worry about it touching anything here. And yeah, you just pull these bolts out. And if you look at a picture of a new starter, you can tell they've just slide in there. And they fit pretty tight with a seal in there, I believe, to keep water out. So I'm going to see if I can slide this out and show you guys. So that slides out real easy. All I did is I grabbed my needle nose pliers and I put it in one of those little holes and I gave it a little bit of pressure and it slid right out. And in there you can see where the starter sits in there. It goes into the flywheel with the fine teeth. I'll try to clean this up a bit, make sure we don't get any in there. And yeah, now I'm going to hook up power directly to this starter with a boost pack. Power there, ground there, and let's see if it spins here. Most likely what we're going to need to do is to open this starter up and either clean it or rebuild it, or if that can't be done, then just replace it. They're about, I don't know, 60 US dollars on Amazon, but I can't get them to ship over here, so it'll probably cost me about 100 by the time I find one that'll ship here. Let's see if we can get this thing to spin. Hook it up to a boost pack here. So there, you gotta be real careful. You got that hooked up there and there. And now, let's see if it'll spin. I'm gonna turn on my boost pack here. So it spins, or at least it did once, but then it quits. And that's kind of what it was doing before too, I find. It would spin once or twice, and then it would quit, almost as if it's got a relay in there that gets hot or goes bad or something. So I'm going to disassemble it, and I'm going to see what I find in there. So this one is actually not an 8mm, that is a 7mm, I believe. But I don't have a 7mm, so I just grabbed a 9/32, which is very close. And yeah, comes out pretty easily. Let's get the other one, let's see what we find. So, I'm back. A second to you is, oh, close to an hour for me, actually. So to take this thing apart, there's not a whole lot to it. You got those 2 screws, those 2 bolts there go in those holes there. I think I told you that already. And you got another 10mm there, but we'll get to that in a bit. So, it's a pretty simple concept. Here, I'll try to put it somewhere where you guys can still see what I'm doing here. So, what I'll do here is a wide view. So, you basically, I've actually never done this before, really. Actually, maybe once or twice years ago, but it's been so long. So you take the bolts out, and maybe the best piece to pull off is wiggle this one free off the top. Gotta be real careful, because you want to make sure there's a bunch of washers and stuff in there that can come out. So you slide that off. See how a little bit of smoke comes out? I was just running it manually. And this is your contact points in there. You can see it's smoking a little bit. And like I said, I've never done this before, so take it with a grain of salt. Maybe do some more research if you're going to rebuild your own starter or whatever, just to be sure. And anyway, so in here, I went ahead and I took it all apart. This might be a little hot right now. But anyway, I went ahead, I took it all apart. But now, what we'll do here is we'll split the bottom off as well. And you got to be careful because there's a bunch of, just put that down there for now. There's a bunch of washers and stuff in there. All this stuff here. But I figured out what the problem is. In here is just your shaft with all your magnets, right? That's what actually creates your power, is in here. So you pull that out, and you see it's all greasy and stuff in there. I'm going to put some more grease in there before I put it all back together again. Dielectric grease is what you need. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't think I even have any dielectric grease here, so I'm going to use whatever I can find. But I don't really care. I'm probably going to end up getting a new starter for this thing anyway. But anyway, so again, make sure your washers are all on there. And slide the shaft back through. You want to make sure it fits tight. It should be tight up against here. What I actually found was, in fact, this piece was the problem. Man, my hands are dirty. It's a good thing I got a good phone case. Waterproof phone case. So anyway, let's go here in the light. So you see those little contacts in there. What you actually got to do is you got to take that little nut off right there. And then you got to slide that apart, and I'll show you here. I'll just do that real quick again. So you got to be real careful. There's a bunch of nuts and stuff on there. So I'll do this again. I'll just give you a more zoomed look here. So put the impact aside. Put this whole starter piece aside. Make sure you don't lose any parts. That's my biggest problem, is always losing parts. So you slide all these washers off. There's going to be some that don't conduct electricity, right? Because this is where your power comes in. Otherwise, it would ground to your starter. So I'm trying to get all these off. They're kind of sticky. But you slide them off. Try to keep them on one little pile so you know what order they go back in on. And then you want to relieve pressure off of this. You pop that in there. And you slide that out. And again, make sure you're not losing any parts. There's washers in there as well, but that one stays in there. And this piece here, this was my problem here. And again, I'm gonna need a new starter eventually anyway, I'm sure. But anyway, so if we go into the light more here, those little contact points, that is where your power comes in. This is filthy, as you can see. That's a little spring there. That little spring there puts pressure on the outside, on that piece there, and pushes it through. And the same with on this side. Oh, come on, stop trying to focus on everything behind there. The same with there. So what I actually ended up doing is I used the needle nose pliers. I relieved the pressure off of that spring, and I pulled it out, and I actually flipped it over. Your wire is actually what's in the way there, your cable. So I pulled that piece out, I relieved pressure off the spring, and I popped it out. You don't really have to worry about the spring popping off too much, because it's just going to hook into that what would you call it there? Anyway, the piece that holds it in there. But what I did is put it out, and I actually flipped it over. I know that's not the right way to do it, but just to get it to come out just a little bit further. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grease it again. I'm going to put pressure. I'm going to push it through as far as I can. And then I'm going to grease it all up again, and I'm going to put it back together. Because earlier I had it apart, and if you wiggled it just right, the starter would kick in, but usually it wouldn't. And like I said, now that I pushed the contacts through as far as I could, I would honestly even consider cutting a little bit of the cable, cutting into the cable a little bit there if necessary. Here, what I'll actually do is I'll pull it out once just so you can see what I'm talking about here. Right there. So, as you can see, I popped it out. That's the housing. That's just where it sits in. And the spring sits in there pretty good. Like I said, it can't go anywhere because it's just sitting in there. And I'll just put that down for now. It pushes that little piece through there. Come on now, focus. Why is it never focusing? There we go, kind of. Okay, so it pushes that piece through. And like I said, that was the contact point that was normally there. But because it's all worn down and such, like I said, I would honestly, in a tight position, if I needed it, I would probably even cut into the cable a little bit. I know that's probably a good way to set my starter on fire, but anyway, for short uses, I hardly ever use my starter anyway. But yeah, like I said, I flipped it over, turned it around. I know it's not how you're supposed to do it, but at least we've got contact that way. Or, like I said, you could try to force it through a little more. I did bend the spring a little bit just to put a little more tension on it. But again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lube it all up again. I'm going to put it back together, and I'll test it here again. just before I put it all back together, or I'll put it back together and then I'll test it, and then before I put it in, it only takes a couple minutes anyway, and then I'll show you guys. Okay, so I put that back on, push the, I don't even know what the fancy term is for it, put it back in there, made sure the nuts were all in the right order, at least as far as I know. Looks okay. Put the nut back on, made sure it was fitted in properly on the inside, otherwise it might not work. Made sure I greased everything as well as I could. Put it all back together. When you put those in, you got to make sure that it's spun in. Just kind of experiment before you put it in to see, make sure you get in the right holes. It's actually not hard. It slides right into place if you do it right. But if you put it in the wrong spot, it won't go in far enough, right? So when it slides in far enough, then you should be, if it slides in quite a ways, then yeah, you should be fine. If it only seems like it slides in half a way, then you probably got to go a quarter turn. But anyway, I just put power to this thing already once without putting the bolts in first. And it almost like it blew up in my hand, actually. It popped. Like, I put power to it first, I was like, oh, this is working, and then all of a sudden, boom! I should have let you guys see that. Would have been kind of like the crazy Russian hacker or something. But anyway, I didn't, obviously. But here, I'll put some power to it again, and I'll show you guys. It seems okay now. So, here we go, I suppose. Maybe the stupid thing blows up in my hands again. Probably not, but give it power. Seems to be working again. So that's good. I'm assuming it just got dirty on the inside to the point where, well, that and the contacts got wore down to the point where it wouldn't work anymore inside the bike. So now, as far as I know, I've got it put together, and I'm hoping with as little as I use my kickstart. It's so easy to start this 450. Hoping now that after I slide it in, put it all back together, it'll work. So here, I'll put it together and then I'll slide it. Well, maybe I can even just do it with you guys here. Gotta make sure that's clean in there. I think it's okay. And make sure everything's out of the way. Slide that in there carefully. I gotta turn it a bit. Wiggle it in. I'll get it lined up. So, got it all in there. And moment of truth. I actually have not had it running yet today, so let's see. Not that we're worried about it, we just want it to crank. Not bad. Not bad at all. I should open the fuel and see if it'll start, actually. I'm pretty sure it will. So there you have it, guys. That's all we needed to know anyway. Choke it there. That's great. I'm actually pretty excited about that. Now I got a starter again. But anyway, hope that video helps somebody. Hope you guys don't do anything that messes anything up. If and when the starter blows up or catches fire, I'll try to update my video a little bit just to warn you guys, or I'll just delete it. But again, take it all with a grain of salt this time, because this was a little bit sketchy. I just figured I'd share it with somebody. Maybe somebody needed some help. Maybe somebody just had absolutely nothing better to do. No, that's probably not it. But as always, hope this helps somebody, and may God bless you.